Today we're looking at the FV9302, the Churchill Flail, commonly referred to as the Toad, but I've been talking to Ed Webster in the UK. Ed's done a lot of research on this vehicle. He's gone through the archives, and he said at no stage through the hundreds of pages that he's looked through that it was officially called the Toad. So the Toad could have been a name used by the crews in an unofficial status, or that it looks like an ugly vehicle and we'll just call it a Toad. It started off in development in the early 50s. In all, there was about 42 vehicles that were made. Within that 42, there was 2 prototypes and 6 pre-production vehicles. So there was only 34 that actually were issued to units. These vehicles operated in a troop of 4, 3 vehicles making a very wide lane with 1 vehicle in reserve. Or if they needed to, worst case, they could have 2 lots of vehicles of 2. Now there's 2 types of ways they can use this. Firstly, on hard ground, they can use the steel wheels to roll across hard surfaces. But if they're going across soft boggy areas, they could actually mount a skid to this area, so it'll literally just drag across the soft ground. So it has 60 chains in all. They're about 1.5 meters in length, and each of these bobbins weighs about 1.13 kilos. Now this drum spins at 150 revolutions per minute, gives a speed of about 90 to 99 kilometers an hour. The drive for the Flail is on the left-hand arm. So this enters through underneath the driver's compartment. The engine to propel this is actually bigger than the engine that drives the vehicle. So in this vehicle, it has the same engine, says the Centurion. So this is the Rolls-Royce Meteor engine. The first prototype used hydraulics in which they could raise and lower the Flail, would also operate the lane marker system, and it would also keep the Flail at a set height so it could actually move along the ground quite easily. But when we get into the production vehicles, that hydraulic system goes to a manual system. So this is now more of a counterbalance for the Flail. So even if it hits mines on the wheels, it'll lift up and this will provide that counterbalance to move back. So on this side here, we have a 15-metre cable, and on the far side, we have a 30-metre cable. Up on the top of the vehicle, we have that bracket there. So essentially, on the back of the Flail, they would attach the cable to there, and either using a vehicle as an anchor or a tree, they would then connect that cable to that anchor and then either pull it back onto its mounting rails here, or they would pull it off and bring it into action. It said that they need to have this vehicle moving before they engage the Flail, because if it's static, it will literally dig itself a hole within the ground right in front of it. They carry a number of spare chains on the back deck for replacements if they get blown up. It's about 140 millimetres of thickness armour on the front and about 95 millimetres of thickness around the side. Once the engine of the vehicle is running, they can use their intercommunication system and radio system, being the Mark 19. But once they engage the engine for the Flail, any voice over the IC or radio becomes inaudible. So what they did as an interim measure which fixed it was they used some RAF headsets. So these were a Type-C headset, and they actually allowed them to be able to hear both IC and radio quite clearly. They have a number of smoke grenade discharges on the front, so they're generally 66mm discharges, and they will give you local protection. The hull itself is utilising the Mark 7 Churchill, so essentially has 11 spring coil bogies, 9 sit actually touching the ground. The front and the rear are slightly elevated, but that more comes into use when they hit a rough obstacle. 2 6-cylinder Bedford engines coupled together through one crankshaft, commonly referred to as a flat 12. This gives you about 350 horsepower. So with the extra weight of this vehicle, it's an extra 4 tonnes heavier than a standard Churchill, drop the speed down to about 20 kilometres an hour. But when they're using the Flail, they'll generally travel anywhere between 3 to 8 kilometres an hour. Right behind the crew compartment is the 650 horsepower Meteor engine. As I said, this runs at about 2400 RPM and provides the power for the Flail. Almost twice the horsepower as the engine to move the vehicle itself. The crew positions, we have the driver on the right-hand side here and the commander on the left. And the driver from his position can fire the lane marker sets from his position. This is a lane marker device. Essentially it runs on a continuous chain underneath, which is driven by the left-hand rear sprocket. The driver can fire a marker which will telescope down into the ground. There's 56 within the carousel here. He can fire them in one line, which will give us a total distance of just over 800 metres, or he can fire them alternatively left and right, so that'll give the following tanks a lane to go through. This one served as part of the Royal Engineers at Ashchurch in England, which is about an hour south of Birmingham. This is the only one out of the 42 that were produced, so this is a nice rare exhibit for the museum to have, and it is in working condition.